Good afternoon. It is Monday night in the city, and welcome to Dialogue with Dozell. You got your boy Dozell himself. Um, I'm joined tonight by my sister, my cousin Janis. Jan, how you doing tonight, sis? You good?
Oh, I'm sorry. Got to open that up. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. Thanks. I'm with my mother tonight and my brother, so up here with the family, doing a few things. So you're looking great as always.
Thank you.
So, well, Jan, we got another fantastic show tonight, sis. And our guests tonight are going to be actually sisters who have suffered some unimaginable losses in their, and one of them tonight is a extremely difficult night. But we'll let them tell us about it. They're gonna come on and share with us. We're gonna talk about blacks in the criminal justice system tonight. They've both done some work here with the Florida legislature about the inadequacies, and I know you got a great framework of knowledge. So, thank you, Jan, for being here, sis.
Okay, great. I look forward to it.
Yeah. Just so y'all know, next week we're picking up Jan. Jan bust me out last week. She and Mr. Jones and my friend Juna, they let the old boy have it last week about being a football NFL alcoholic of the league with all of the inadequacies in hiring. And we're going to talk about that. So that's next week's show. We're back at it. We're going to continue that. And just so you all know, this is February 27th. Tomorrow is February 28th. Guess what that represents? The shortest month in the history of humankind. Um, and that is the month that the motherland, or not the motherland, America has designated that we would celebrate our Black history. But you know, some of us don't let them limit us to that. For instance, our church, like most churches, we do lift every voice and sing. Well, I have covenanted with my ministry, and it just slips my mind. This year we're going to do that once a month. We're going to sing lift every voice and sing every month, just like we celebrate the Lord's table. We're going to close out our services with that song we haven't designated the Sunday yet, but we're going to do that all year long this year. And so just like that, we had so many topics, and we had some part twos and some part threes. In fact, next week's going to be a part three. Guess where it falls? It falls in March. But we're going to continue with that. We're not going to let America or anybody else tell us when we can have the type of shows and the themes of our shows. So next week we're going to pick this back up next week. But tonight we're talking about blacks in the criminal justice system. Joining us, two awesome sisters, bona fide community leaders. Um, Unfortunate circumstances brought them into where they are really where their services are where their services are reaching the levels that you're going to see and hear of tonight. Um, Tangela Sears, come on, sis, and she has asked and consenting to come on, and it's so nice meeting you, Sister Regina Talbot. We're just so glad to have you all both on. If you could just in a second tell us a little bit about yourselves.
First of all, I want to say happy heavenly birthday to my son today, who I'm celebrating. Let him know that myself, his father, his daughter, and our family, we love you and we miss you. That's the
Yeah.
first thing I want to say. But
What's his
unfortunately,
name, Tangela?
his name is David Queen. Unfortunately, this work dealing with violence didn't start with me when I lost my son. It actually started back in the 90s when we had a lot of gun violence. We had a crime bill that came down here that created a group called Weed and Seed that weeded the negative off of our street and planted programs within our streets. So it started way back there. I became a representative of the state
Yeah.
attorney, working in the courts, working with the Department of Children and Families. So after losing my son, I wanted to give up on everything, and I didn't do anything for many, many months. I vowed not to help another person. I ended up being placed in a program because I was headed down the wrong road,
Miss
and
Tangela, let
while
us
in
let
that
us
program, I
let,
created Florida Parents of Murdered Children.
let's talk about we're going to get into what you all are doing. I just want to intro Sister Regina. Sister Regina, just give us a short introduction. Introduce yourself to Dozell and just
Hi, my name is Regina Tolliver. I am part of Florida Plans for Murdered Children, and I work for Dade County Public Schools
hmm,
for 38 years.
wow, wow. Thank you, sis. Appreciate it. Do we have Miss Tangela back? Okay. Do we have okay. Jan, so okay, so Miss Tangela, we don't so Jan, we have all kind of things to talk about tonight. We have these two sisters who's and my co-host, my brother, is also a victim of having lost a son to gun violence here in Duval County. Um, and he tells his story every in his training when he trains police departments, and I'm just always amazed at how he does that and maintains as he does. But we want to talk about other aspects tonight. So just lead us into talking about some of the inadequacies in the justice system, if you would. We really have a short script tonight because we got four guests, two
Right.
guests.
Well, of course, you have experience in one part of the criminal justice system, which is law enforcement. We then have the courts and corrections. And I think that we need to always be mindful of how law enforcement, or shall I say, the origins of modern day policing came about, which in actuality comes about and can be traced back to the slave patrol, the earliest formal slave patrol, which was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with the following mission, which was to establish a system of terror in response to slave uprisings with the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves or enslaved people to their owners, including the use of excessive force to control and produce desired slave behavior. The slave patrols allowed forcible entry into any home solely based on suspicions of protecting runaway slaves. Slave patrols continued until the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment. So that's just one element of law enforcement policing. But we know that there are racial disparities in the criminal justice system. If you start with the origins of present day policing. And so, to hear from these mothers who have lost their children, their sons, is one side of the equation, because I don't know just what transpired to get them to that point. But I think one of the things that we should always be mindful of is the net effects of histories and justices on the criminal justice system. Those three elements: law enforcement, the courts, and then, of course, we've got the corrections departments. So those are some of the areas that I'm always mindful of, and I look forward to hearing from the mothers about how they encountered the criminal justice system and how each of those entities worked in their favor or disfavor, and what their thoughts are about any reforms that should be in place.
Ladies, can you all give us do you all have any experiences that you can share I mean, pre the tragedies that you suffered? Can you have any experiences, either yourselves or things that you observed? Both of you all are in Dade County, correct?
Yes, and I can say this. Dade County have made a lot of changes. There was years ago, it was a lot of art between the community and policing. I'm not saying everything is perfect now, but through those marches and those rallies and us, there was a lot that went on. There was a police killing a child every week. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that no more. And our law enforcement have relationships, and I think you know that your brother works with City of Miami Police Department, who's very community oriented. But it took a lot for us to get to where we're at. And and like I say, every now and then we have someone, but I have to look at case by case.
Okay.
But I fought the system. I represent the state attorney. I protest her office before
Miss Regina, while we're getting changed to straighten out, what has been your experiences with law enforcement and
Well,
right.
with law enforcement,
People to be
I
given.
didn't receive any justice. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we hear you.
Yes. My daughter
Yes,
got
yes, we
killed.
can. Regina did not receive justice. Regina.
Oh, go ahead, Miss Regina.
Yeah. This is my daughter. I lost my daughter. This is Naricia.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. She was my baby girl out of five. I put a lot of time in with her for her education and trying to make sure she was a young lady of excellence. To say that, our communities and as Black families, we do invest in our children too. They are important, very important to our future. And what happened to her? She got killed the day after my birthday. Just asked me, could she go out to dinner with a friend of hers? And she was dropping someone off. And as she was dropping someone off, these guys came up. It wasn't meant for her, but the retaliation went on, and she got caught up in the midst of the retaliation.
I
And
just lost a
she got,
cousin like that.
yeah. So she was shot in the head with an AK. And that was the worst nightmare, the beginning of my life. But I had to stay on my knees. I
Let
tell
me
you.
let me ask. I want to go into those two tragedies and speak of some that I'm aware of and some that have directly affected our family. I had a recent one I just
Right,
mentioned. Um,
right.
a very recent.
Your brother definitely understand the heart that
Yeah, yeah. We
the our lives and the changes and how the lack of the community. I hear the community keep fighting with police, but
It's
we've
just,
come a long ways in Dade County, and Regina could tell you they work with us every single day.
let
I've
me
been working with law enforcement for years. Anything these parents need and want, they are at their beck and call. We
yeah.
don't have
let,
the
let me
community is not at our beck and call like
let,
that.
let me change it, Miss Tangent. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you all this.
Hmm.
What so let's go prior to your involvement because of your tragedies. What
Oh, I
have
was
been
involved for 30 years in gun violence
okay? Yeah, tell us a
prior
little bit
to.
about
Because I
just
listen to activists say that
your
when.
brother's the greatest activist in South Florida, Bishop Victor T. Curry.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. My right hand, I mean, walks with me through it all. But back in the 90s, when the crime bill passed, which I'm still a little disappointed that President Biden apologized about that, because it makes my Congresswoman Carrie Meek at the time, who's a hero across this nation, look
Hmm.
as though she was doing something bad when I had parents at that time that was losing their kids at an alarming number. I lived in the area. I'm not talking about people didn't live in this area. If you stood on the wrong corner, you was killed.
Mm.
If you owed somebody some money, you was killed. And so she was tired of riding out of her parking lot from home and seeing yellow tape, another black man on the ground over another black man. And so that crime bill was when she brought
Hmm.
weed and seed and she used the money. And I look in some of those parents' faces today and I let them know. I apologize for what the president said because I know how it is to go to sleep at night
Hmm.
and not have your child.
To try to go to sleep.
Try to
Right,
go.
unless you take
Right.
some medication or something. They try and go to sleep and you still only sleep for 2 hours. A lot of people fight, they don't hear our stories. We had people like Bishop Curry, we have an attorney, we had a few legislators that came into, even editors of newspapers that came into our meeting because I wanted them to hear us, not what they thought, not what they think. And I tell every parent, and Regina knows this, make your detective your best friend. because that's really all we have. I can't
Yeah.
speak of no one else.
Mm.
That's who we have because they trying to get our killer off the street. Now, when we don't have the access of a
Yes.
detective in our life, that's when retaliation. And I know because it's played over and over. All day it played in my head. I
What
can't say what would happen
one of
if
the,
I saw my son killer.
yeah, one of the things that is this is, I mean, Jan, when people bring this up, and when I was an officer, and of course I was a police officer back in the days when racial tolerance was not to the point that it is now, if you can believe that of the 70s and 80s. Um, but nothing would make me mad than to have one of these white boys or white brothers say to me, y'all kill each other. How y'all gonna complain about
Yes.
what's going on? That just
Mm-hmm.
distresses me. Then when I look at the stats, and I say, dog, man, and I just lost a cousin to black on black crime, lost a nephew 8 years ago to black on black crime. Jan, what is the solution to black on black crime? What's some of the stuff
I
that
say
you
the same
you
thing.
stood up for in the legislature? She was a legislature for Congressman. I always want to say Dellums is not Dellums, it's Conyers. Uh, what's some of the things that you all attempted to do to curtail this and in the community, Jan?
Right. I worked for Congressman John Conyers, who at one time was the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, the U.S. House of Representatives. I, there are a lot of things that were done, and I was interested in hearing Miss Sears as she started talking about the crime bill. And I wasn't sure if you were saying that you were in favor of the crime bill and some of its elements that Senator Biden, who was the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee back then, and I wasn't sure what you were
Yes,
saying.
I was in support of it because my friends who's being released now, they even come on my Facebook and said, Tangela, if I had not went to jail, I probably wouldn't be living. I talk to all of them still right now. I was right there in the neighborhood with them. I knew them. I talked to them for jail. One just got out last week. And all we need again today is, and I'm talking to my Congresswoman Frederica Wilson about it every day. Everybody know in Miami that it's my issue to bring four or
Mm-hmm.
five more federal agents in our community to get these killers out of our streets. It's getting worse and worse. We've
It
had over
is.
50 shootings and
Mm-hmm.
killings
Yes,
in our community
it
within
is.
1 month, the month of January. We cannot continue to live like this.
Right.
Losing
So
somebody else.
along that vein, I was working in Washington at that time, and I know the community that I lived in was Capitol Hill, which was being gentrified at that point in time. But there were murders on my block across the street from my house. There was a little park all the time. And I remember the term super predator coming into play, which is the theory that in criminology that became popular in the 1990s. Uh, that a small but significant and increasing population of impulsive, and they would say urban, meaning black, youth were willing to commit violent crimes without remorse. And we have that going on now, that continues, that we have young people, and by that I mean pretty much between ages 14 and 35 is the demographic, and they're males, and they're black males, and they're in
Mm-hmm.
urban center cities. So then what is that? They're super predators. They're shooting women in the head here in Detroit. They're shooting women in the neck when they are carjacking them. They are shooting us with
Sorry,
no
I didn't hear anything you said. The phone cut out. I don't know if everybody else heard, but I didn't
I
hear,
did.
and I want to hear you.
right. So in a nutshell, what I was saying, the Sears, is that when you were speaking on the crime bill, people have to put it into the context of what was happening in the 1980s, 1990s, which was wholesale violence in the streets, particularly for those of us in urban center cities, majority cities, which were majority black. And for me in Washington, D.C., I was encountering murders on my street. Um, and so what our legislators came up with was to address what was happening at the time. And a lot of people will say, black and white, well, Hillary Clinton during the Clinton presidential years, she was talking about super predators, which I said, that's it was defined as a small but a significant and increasing population of impulsive, often urban, which means Black
Okay.
youth who were willing to commit violent crimes without remorse. And that's what we're seeing now with violence. I can't really speak about what's going on in white communities or Asian communities primarily because the country's still segregated. And there are some people who are living in mixed communities of racial, ethnic groups, but largely we're still segregated in where we live. And so when I see and hear every night at least 3 or 4 or 5 shootings in just the Detroit area, multiply that across the United States, these are
Jeez.
Black males ages 14 to 35
Yes.
that are committing these crimes. And we had a person in around Christmas time, maybe it was November, who did what? Was going on a date with a young lady. This is a young Black male on a date with a young Black female. Something happened. He didn't like whatever went on. He shot her in the car and pushed her out of the car on the freeway. I'm just curious as to what is it about some of our young people and our young men who have such a disregard for human life. We then moved into the holiday season and there was just so much gun violence, men, Black men shooting Black women in the
Yes.
city of Detroit for no reason. If you're going to carjack a person, say, hey, I need your keys, got to go. They'll give them to you. But we're having young Black males carjacking women, shooting them, killing them. Sometimes they are babies in car seats. They take off. They have no regard for human life. They'll take the baby out, possibly in the car seat, put that baby in the street, maybe on a curb, and keep on going. If you steal a car, it's going to be found. You can only have that stolen vehicle for a short period of time
Yes.
unless you chop it up. And my vehicle, before the one I have now, was stolen 4 times from in front of my house in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill over the course of 10 years, between 2002 and 2012. 4 times stolen. So I think we need to really start looking at why are our young men, because that's who's doing it, is largely not women. When a Black woman kills, it's probably because she's been beaten or terrorized, possibly domestic violence, but it's just wholesale throughout this country. Chicago, I'm in Detroit. It is Black on Black crime, and we have to call it what it is, and we need to look back as to why are some of our young men, why do they have such a disregard for human life?
Let her answer the
So,
doctor.
so let me. I want to bring you in, Miss Regina, and Tens. I know you haven't answered. We have to catch that on the other side of the break. I want
Yes,
to remind
ma'am.
everybody we do have to stay into 2 minutes, guys, because it's 4 of us tonight, and we got several topics, and we got a hard break in a few minutes coming up. Um, Miss Regina, I know all of our panel tonight, we're spiritual persons. We believe in redemption. We believe in the redemption by the blood of Jesus. We believe in the Lord, the power of grace and all of those factors. Heck,
Okay.
I'm a preacher. But since you all are calling out what it is, Jan, you're calling out brothers who are
Yes.
precipitous of this. Miss Regina, what is it about the psychology of our Black brothers that's given over to this fatal violence?
Um, it starts in the house. They starting out very young. They in gangs. Um, when my daughter got killed, I didn't get no justice. They caused no witness. They saw things, but the witness was scared to come forth. They didn't want to come forth. So I had that problem, but they getting younger and younger. I work with kids every day in schools where they go with the house arrest bands on legs. So I mean, it's just all of it starts in the house with the parents. The parents is on drugs. I mean, some of them just and some of them work. They work so much till they it's nobody there to watch over them. There's no father, you know what I'm saying? Then the mother trying to work. So you got to look at it more than one way. And we just losing our children. They don't have no respect. I mean, it hurts my heart in my community where I live. I hear police every day going back in the back by the townhouses. And, even in schools, I deal with a lot of foster kids. I deal with a lot of foster kids. They're losing their parents and they're angry. They are angry. So hurting people hurt people. And if they don't finish school or get some education, that's what they do. They take it out on other people, and they get to a point they don't care. So they join these gangs and they get involved with I don't know if they just groups, but it's happening. Since my daughter got killed, it picked up. I started noticing it more and more. It picked up. They could kill you, kill your family member, and go home and go to sleep. If I hurt your feeling, it bothers me till I get it right. So I don't know. They're not praying anymore in the houses. The village about gone. So I mean, nobody want to be bothered with the kids. So what happened? They throws them in the system.
So I'm a retired, Tangela, you may know, I may have said, I'm a retired school teacher. I've been a little bit of everything. I served in law enforcement. I've pastored for nearly 40 years,
Excuse me,
40 plus years. T.D. Jakes and I've been preaching about the same time. We're about the same age, and he almost preaches as well as I do. Just a little joke. But I've retired from the school system, and one of the things that on my heading out the door was the lack of respect. It's just crazy. I was doing some voter canvassing the other day, and I was signing up a young girl and explaining to her, young lady explaining to her that your age, you'll be pre-registered. You're going to get a notification from the supervisor of elections, and in 2 years, you'll get your card. But congratulations, sister, you're well on your way. Everything I said to her, Jan, was yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That's how we answered our parents. My mother's still here, and I still answer her, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. And I still, if I did anything less, I'd be scared of my dad coming from glory and jap slapping me. So that was just what we did. That's what parents did, and that was what we did with our children. So when you talk about a lack of respect, I guess it starts there before you can talk about caring. And I mean, how can you shoot a human being? I mean, I was a police, so you're trained, you do what you have to do, but just to kill, like in your case, Miss Regina, in the case of my cousin that I lost on New Year's Eve, is just mistaken identity. It's just he was killed like assassination style. He was gunned down like mafia style, and it's just absolutely unreal how we have no respect for each other. And I tell you, and I'm gonna say it again. I got a white brother watching us. We work together in law enforcement. I'm appalled. I'm frustrated when somebody from across the track say to me, "We don't have to worry about killing you. We don't want to hear this because y'all kill each other." That's very indicting and appalling. You hear it. Chance, we're gonna weigh in with you when we come back from this break. We got to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back to this dialogue. It's interesting, y'all. Tell Paul, tell Saul, or tell them all. Join us right here, Dialogue with Josie. World.com. They're the ones who make even me look good. They are our sponsors right here, Dialogue and Dozell. Also New Life Church Without Walls. They sponsor everything that we do. We're so glad to have them aboard. Listen, you need web billing, you need virtual production, whatever it is you need, they got you. MoGoGigaWorld.com. That's all you got to do. Contact Latoya, Markia and Company, and they'll make you look good. We're going to come back to the dialogue. We want to just do this special Black History moment. Harlem, New York. Nestled between Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard and Frederick Douglass Street is a section of New York that's called Harlem. It's Lower Manhattan. I don't know why they call it lowest of numbers, I guess. Harlem is a center of black life. It ranks along with Grand Boulevard, Jan, in over in Detroit and other areas there. Florida Avenue, Myrtle Avenue in Jacksonville, the Sistrunk Corridor in Fort Lauderdale, Liberty City in Dade County, and Watts out in Los Angeles. Harlem is a center of our culture. It's a center of our togetherness. It's a center of historically where when you couldn't go anywhere else and have a business, you could have it in Harlem. Harlem, New York, 1930. Actually, Harlem is was formed and it got its name from its Dutch ancestors who came into and made Harlem what it was. And then in around 1930, at the turn, the middle of the 1900s, it started becoming more and more black. That around 1960, Harlem was predominantly a black area. Um, Harlem is the place of the renowned Apollo Theater. The famous Adam Clayton Powell pastored in Harlem, New York, at the Abyssinia Baptist Church, where he was followed by the recently deceased Dr. Calvin Butts, preceded by his father, Adam Clayton Powell Sr. Adam Clayton Powell is the one um, who captured the term. Well, it wasn't. He says he talked about doing what had to be done to make America see and come to our needs and make come to our needs and reach down to where we need to be. It's the center of black culture, and it's in the world's most famous city, the city that never sleeps. If you're ever through there, you'll see the Apollo Theater is the home of James Brown. It's the home of Michael Jackson. It is the home of Luther Vandross. It's the home of Patti LaBelle. It's the home of Aretha Franklin. It is, Dan, you know I had to say that. It's the home of Diana Ross and the Mighty Supremes, the home of the Four Tops, and more recently, it's the home of Boys to Men, the Apollo Theater where the great ones, Richard Pryor, the great ones appeared there, and many got their stars. You had to be good to survive in Apollo Theater, as they would jack you off the stage. I almost used that word. They would jack you off the stage. Harlem, New York, is still a center of black culture. It's the center of black togetherness, and it's the center of when you think of New York and you think of where blacks in their heyday, when they couldn't go in other areas and thrive, Harlem was there. We're going to be highlighting other areas, Watts and other areas over these next few weeks. You've heard me say that we're not stopping. With tonight is the last night of that we could talk about Black history. We're going to continue this over into March. Thank you for hearing about Harlem, New York. Listen, a dear brother that I have reconnected with via social media, John Powell. You may see his comments. I want to read them. He answered immediately when I talked about why are our males. He said, I wrote a paper back in the early 1990s while taking master levels courses at FSU. Come on, Johnny, we're doing good till you said FSU. It's all about this chop, man. Anyway, the number of female head of households in public housing in Daytona Beach. Too many kids then and today don't have a typical steady home life. Ladies, I want you all to answer that. Were you all single mothers?
Some father was
I'm
in
not
his life, and I
necessarily.
just want to say that I lived in New York. I lived behind the Apollo Theater with my grandfather. I actually gave birth to my son in Queens, New York. I also lived in Detroit with my father. My uncle was in Detroit, Michigan. My father was in Southfield, Michigan. Of course, there was two different cities, two definitely different cities. So I've had that opportunity, and I've been working with a lot of the families in Chicago. But when you talk about our brothers,
Yeah,
there's no consequences to their actions.
yeah,
There's no consequences. You talked about what you could not do. You could not say just yes or what to your mother. You had to say yes, ma'am, because there was rules in your household. There was
Yes,
rules in
ma'am.
our households. There's
No,
no
sir.
rules in households, even in the school system now, where I work very close with the school system. You have, remember back in the days, our mother would give us an eye and we knew to shut up? Well, a child gives the mother the eye now, and that means be quiet. So everything, this village we want back, the village not coming back. And
You
if
don't
you
think
study
so?
if
You
you
don't think
study the
so?
word of God, if you study the word of God, then you know that everything that the word of God said, it's coming to pass.
Yes, it is.
And you're right about that. Miss Regina, um, I heard everything Tangela said, Janice. Everything she said when the mother, when mom looked and when mom looked. I want to go back to what my friend John says. He talks about a lot of this being a result of the man not being in the household in our homes. Now we were fortunate that our dad was a dad par excellence. He ran a boys' home, as you know, Jen, and that was back when corporal punishment was not corporal punishment; it was sergeant punishment. And when he said yes, sir, well, he said you better say yes, sir, like he's addressing a drill sergeant. And single parents and men would bring their children to the boys' home for him to introduce them to the concept of discipline.
Right.
So, John, I hope when you met me, I was displaying that discipline. But I
I don't,
said
I
all that
don't,
to
I don't
say,
agree completely with what John has said. That's really um, globalizing it because there are a lot of single-headed households by women, Black women, for a variety of reasons. You know, the father may have died early on. Um, there's just a number of reasons. So we can't hang our hat on, oh, it's single mothers, single parents, single households. It's deeper than that, and we really have to get beyond that. I can tell you about a household that was next door to me in Washington, D.C., where there was mother, father, house. They owned a house. The mother was probably about a GS 15 in the federal government, so that's a pretty high wage earner. But this one family had 4 boys. When I moved there, and I was the gentrifier moving into the community, Black community, the one brother was murdered up the block, I was told, somewhere in the 90s, early 2000s, for participating in drug dealing and whatever it caught up with him. Another brother serving a 35-year prison sentence for participating in a murder in a strip mall, convenience stores, dry cleaners, all of that, a couple blocks from our homes. And the 2 last sons are the ones that I had to deal with, a set of twins, constantly for 12 years. And they did not come from a single. Now, the father, I was told, moved out because he was pistol whipped by the boys because it appeared they want to do what they want to do. The mother, from what I could see, was an enabler. Unfortunately, Tangi, or no, Regina, you said that you got no justice. I never got justice from the DC Police Department for all the crimes that were happening. Murder in front of my house, car
Gee.
firebombed in front of my house, rape on the corner, another murder, another. And I was constantly reporting this, pictures, license plates, the drug deals, all of that was going on. But the police really wanted nothing to do with me. They thought I was the problem. So at a certain point, it became I was being threatened by these individuals at gunpoint,
Mhm.
just trying to get into my house. I'm walking down the street from the subway. They're sitting on my car. They're sitting
these are
on my
black males.
black males, yes. And so, once again, lack of respect for a woman, which I was an elder of theirs, their friends cursing me out, them, the young men that lived in the house. I'm talking, they were 22 when I moved there. Um, and they were allowing their friends, other black males, to come to their home and disrespect and disrupt the community. And I'm going to tell you, most of the license plates of these young men were Maryland. So why aren't you doing this trash where you live?
Yeah.
Because that's not going to be accepted
Baltimore.
in Prince George's County, not for sure, and other parts of Maryland. And so you got to get back to this, the psychosis of why is it that some of our young Black men, particularly in urban cities, urban centers, are behaving this way. It's not always because it's a single parent household or an impoverished household. Look up the GS scale for federal employees. You're talking about over $100,000. Okay. So for the parent making that. So it's something deeper than that we
Let
have
me
to deal with.
let me ask you right there, Jan, because I'm going to get to. I'm going to let me put a pause. Let me make an interjection. I'm coming right back to you because you're getting right where I want to get to. Remember, we guys, we're right up against the clock, so let's make our comments short. Um, you've heard me see on here, and I don't know if you were on the other night. My brother worked here in Jacksonville, and I worked there in Daytona. My brother had a distinguished career up here. Retired, he could be the mayor. He was so popular. He worked most of his career in specialized divisions, primarily in narcotics. But I had the option to work because my dad was worked for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I didn't like what I saw growing up, and it wasn't racial. Yeah, Jacksonville certainly was racist, but it wasn't the racial component. It was just that the police was so brutal, and I didn't want to be a part of that. I go to Daytona not knowing what the makeup would be. The one thing I liked about that department, the one thing, not the one thing, there were several things, but what I really liked about the department, they were not going to let you monk up their tourist dollar by you being an idiot with a badge and a gun and mace.
Mm-hmm.
You were not gonna lose tourists because of you not being able to handle yourself. Now, if you were correct, they certainly backed you. I saw it happen. But if you weren't, you broke the law. Just like these guys in Memphis, they're hung out to dry. They asked for that. Derek Chauvin asked for that. Now I'm going to get back to your question. I just wanted to say because I think we kind of missing this whole component of law enforcement. My daddy well equipped me. We had a 1969 Deuce and a quarter spoke wheels Dallas Cowboy blue white convertible, and I drove at 16. I was a short 16 at that time, and he told me, he said, "This is what you're going to do. They're going to stop you, and this is exactly what you're going to do." And believe me, when they stopped me, my heart was beating out of my chest. But my daddy's words still resonate in my mind today. He told me exactly what to do, and I did exactly that. And I had no problem. I had no problem. Not giving anybody an out, not giving anybody out because policemen are not judge, executioners, and none of those. I like what Tangela, I know what you're doing. Miss Regina, I'm not sure what you do. I like what you're doing, bridging the gap between policing and community, particularly our community. I remember
But
Miss
I do want to say this now. We had a police officer because someone stole some meat. They was hungry out the store and they beat this man bad. Now just because I work with them don't mean I won't call out their wrongs.
and I
That
know you
man
would.
did
I
not
know you will.
deserve to, yeah, that man did not deserve to be beat down. It was in the city of Miami Police Department. I think in one of your brother classes I brought it up, because I'm going to deal with these issues. So just because there's a lot of good cops, but
Yeah,
it's that small version of bad cops that just blanket the whole department. So
yes.
that's why I deal with things individually. But yes, when they come up short, I stand up to them as well.
But
Thanks.
that's not happening all across. Dozell knows that I've had to sue a police department over a wrongful arrest, and it was not a white officer that did it. It was a black officer,
Wow.
and it was over the most insane thing, which was really ego,
So
and I
Jen's the
won.
badge. It's the badge and not the skin color.
It's the badge for sure. It's
It's
the
the
culture.
badge.
It's
It's
the
the
blue.
badge.
It's the blue wall of silence that we've seen on issues such as the George Floyd murder. I've seen it happen. I'm a woman, and I've encountered it. I've encountered it all through the 80s and early 90s when I was driving a Corvette, and I was constantly stopped in DC because officers didn't think that, or shall I say, their mindset was, well, that couldn't possibly be your car. It must be your boyfriend or your husband's who's a drug dealer. So all of these biases come into place, and constantly, and I live on Capitol Hill, constantly being stopped. What do when you stop a person? License, registration, insurance, all in my name. So you got biases that play into it in policing that I still think needs a lot of reforming, just from my own personal experiences. And it's unfortunate the experiences that I talked about. Only when there was yet another murder in my community, I heard the gunshot, saw a car speeding down the street, rolling stop, person jump out, presumably put the gun somewhere, jump back in the car. All of these things happens only when there was yet another murder. That's three at that point. Did the homicide detectives take it seriously? I've testified before grand juries. The issue with Miss Regina, I'm so disheartened to hear that your case fell apart, because I've had cases fall apart. They're still cold cases of young men being murdered, but because presumably someone didn't want to testify, there was a 4-year case coming up, a trial, which I was called in to testify on what I knew about it, but it fell apart after 4 years because someone probably didn't want to testify. And you're very, very, very accurate. They may have been scared because they may have been threatened. Their families. I mean, those are real, real things. But I think our community still needs to report violence at different levels whenever they come across it, because to hear a mother not get justice for their child, a young lady who had all kinds of promise in her life to be ended, that's so hurtful. And we need to really come up off of that no snitching thing.
Jan, I want you to
Yeah,
do
and
this.
one of the
Oh,
things I started in Florida was we created, once I got with the parents and I dealt with these stories of witnesses, because none of them had an arrest. I did have an arrest in Tallahassee. None of them had an arrest. None of them had their day in court. And I learned that it was dealing with a witness. We have a law in Florida now that witness identities, well, it's not on the books. It's not in the state attorney office. It's not in public records. All of it has been removed. That was one of the laws that we went up there to change, to protect
Yeah,
these victims, these witnesses. Because even though I'm a victim, I understand the fear of a witness, because back in the days when they had killings, if you remember, women and children was off limits. Not that what they was doing was
yeah,
right, but women and children was off limits. Today they will listen. I got two birthday parties, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, got shot up. 3-year-old and 6-year-old.
yeah.
So and then they wear it with a badge of honor. They put their little teardrop on their face right there, because now they done did something. And women, they have a lot to do with it too. I learned from Luther Campbell that a lot of these women go and purchase guns and report them stolen.
yeah, Jan,
As
unbelievable. So, Jan, I want to let these ladies. I want Tanya to elaborate a little bit more on what she's doing, what both of them are doing. But I want to give them time to talk about their children, because we're not talking about a statistic. We're talking about a son. I know Tangela, and I know her hurt. I follow her, and when she posts something that it's not a good day, or I'm crying inside because I feel it. I'm joined with this sister, and I'm now joined with Regina by meeting her. I want to give you a second to talk and humanize your children. They're not just a number. But Jan, you were right at a point. If you could, in 90 seconds, and you were getting to right what I want to talk about. And man, I'm taking a hit again tonight. I'm by myself. I wish Kim was here, so at least another male was here. But I just have to take this beating, ladies. I have to take it as in face to face. Jan, you were talking about a psychosis when we stopped. In 90 seconds, tell us, what is it that has caused us? Is it that hatred that we learn through American history, from slavery down, disdain for each other?
I don't I
How
don't
is
think it's I don't think there I think that probably has something to play on it. And I am not a psychologist, I'm not a clinical therapist or anything, but just from my observations through the years, this type of wanton violence that we're seeing now, that we didn't see in the 70s. We still had poverty, we still had single parent households, we still had a lot of that. In the 80s, it started getting worse, but right now it's just, I mean, just killing women, it's amazing. um, I think that the media has a lot to do with it. The cultural representations in the media has had a large play. Going back to our music, what are our young people ingesting, not only in nutrition in their bodies, but in their minds, and what are they seeing? And as I look at television, as I look at a lot of the imagery out there, everybody's holding a gun. Everyone's holding a gun. I love Queen Latifah, Dana Campbell. who is in the what is the name of that role? Um, the Equalizer television version, holding guns. Angela Bassett, love her, phenomenal actress. She was on a series. It's all about guns. So we as American society, we love our guns and we really do love violence. And so we got to look at what are we ingesting? What are our young people being exposed to? Music that glorifies violence, misogynistic against women. I mean, just it's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of our young people possibly are not able to discern reality from fantasy, which is what media images are
Mhm.
putting upon them.
So I don't even want to get into, and that's going to be a show. We're going to take a whole show and talk about this whole American fascination with guns. Here we are, a culture, the greatest civilization on the planet, and we can't control. Billy Jack said it in 1969 or 71. He says we won't put the same laws on our guns that we put on our dogs, our cats, our bicycles, and other things. And that has just gotten more extreme
Mhm.
with the right wing agenda. But we'll talk about that on another show. Ladies, I want you all to take a minute or two apiece and familiarize us with your loss, with your daughter, with your son, and tell us what you're doing. I heard you all talk about foundations. We got a few minutes left on the show. We want to dedicate that. We knew we couldn't solve it all tonight, but we want you all to let us know about your children.
Well, first of all, I want your cousin to send me her information because I'm in Washington from time to time. And I would like to communicate with you more. And I
Well,
also want to piggyback off of something she said. When people say it's the father outside of the home, I have friends that's single mothers, and their kids are doing great. They're doing. I mean, they're aspiring in life. But then I have some that have mother and father, and they've lost total control. So I understand exactly what she was saying. Um, this organization, one of the things I say, bringing Regina, because there was no mothers involved in Miami. There was nothing going on. Bringing them together and me understanding the police department and that forcing I forced our directors. I forced our chiefs of police. I forced
Mhm.
our mayor. I forced our state attorneys. I forced them to come to the table. And I didn't allow anybody in the room except parents that had lost their kids.
oh,
Because
Mhm.
I noticed that a parent that haven't lost their kid,
can't
they
relate.
go back and forth with the mother. And I think that's so unfair
Yeah.
because you don't understand exactly what they dealing with, what they feeling. When that police thing, when I first started this group, police was not making contact with parents. They didn't hear from advocate programs. They didn't even know they exist. Well, now in Miami-Dade County, and as I work it across the state of Florida, we're trying to make sure that every department have the advocate services that's helping these families. I don't know if
Mhm.
you all saw what happened at FAMU, and I'm gonna close with this. FAMU, we got this open carry law on the book thing now that they're trying to pass. FAMU had their homecoming a couple of weeks ago. You all probably saw all the nice pictures from the homecoming, but what you didn't see was there was a bunch of kids walking around on the side of the campus in front of a liquor store. They had guns in their hands, just drinking and walking around and just enjoying themselves. And then they all started shooting in the crowd. Everybody was shooting at each other, people falling on the ground. And I actually saw the video because I was up in the state attorney's office in Tallahassee. And I saw the video, and I mean, for nights I couldn't sleep thinking about that video. And these was all black kids and just shooting each other. And one of the things he said to me was, do you realize each one of these kids will use stand your ground? Because it's going back and forth at one another. So could you imagine what open carry will be? So we need you pastors throughout the state of Florida to come up to Tallahassee with us, not just for a day's day or a session day, a pastor's day. No, come and join in these committee meetings. And I know your cousin know what I mean when I say get into these committee meetings.
I'm coming up with Faith in Florida, Tangela, in a few in at the end of next week, I think, and be a part of the session. While she's fixing that, Regina, tell us something about your daughter that humanize your daughter for us here.
Well,
And
she
how long was that? Did that tragedy occur? How long ago?
6 years ago.
My God, my
She
goodness!
got killed the day after my birthday.
Wow.
Something I never forget. So painful. She was my baby girl out of 5. And I always been around a lot of military. We was military. I wasn't, but I've been married twice. So we got a chance to really, um, I did get a chance to bring her to New York. We was planning on going back, but it was so painful. She was my baby girl. She was 17 years old, and she got killed by a 15-year-old. And at the time she got killed, was 2 other friends in the car with her. Her classmates, they got shot, but she was the only one to get shot in the head. Driving my car.
Tell us some good memories of your daughter.
Oh, good memories. She loved to shop like her mother. I use that for therapy.
Janis,
I
that's what
tell
y'all
my
do, man.
I, I use it for therapy. She played the piano that I
Oh
have in my
wow.
house. That was her therapy. She liked jazz like her mom. She know I love jazz. And she was just so funny and smart, and I just love her. I miss her so much. She was so respectful. You would love her. I told Tan, I said, you would have fell in love with her because she was always kissing and hugging. And she was in the IB program at South Day High School. She
Oh
wanted to be a nurse practitioner, a
wow.
traveling nurse practitioner. She knew the money she was going to make. She had a passion for nursing, taking care of people. And I had thought she was going to be here to take care of me.
Mm.
And that's the part I miss of her. And I smile and just always come hugging me or kissing on me. You know, that
Regina,
was part of it. That's hold on.
Regina,
Oh, hold on.
she, she's she's gonna take care of you right here in your heart. Okay. Never forget that. She was right there in your heart throughout the days of your life. Tangela, if you would, in 30 seconds or so, tell us about your son. Tell us some good memories. Tangela. Tangela, in 30 seconds or so, tell us about your son. Tell us some good memories. Make us laugh.
My son was a football player. Um, One of the funniest stories that a lot of his friends tell us is we talk about is he went to FAM. But he's a Florida State lover. He loves Florida State. And somehow he even had the guys on the football team falling in love with Florida State. And he started
He wasn't a Gator, but that's all right. God still loved him. um,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
was I'm gonna leave it with this. I was watching a PBS once
J-
again
Jan,
documentary on Jackie Robinson, and his son went astray. No family is immune from a
yeah,
child
great
going
point.
astray. His
Great
son was in Vietnam War, injured, started using drugs over in Vietnam, came home, was addicted, and unfortunately died, at a very young age. No family is immune from the ravages of drugs or friends having
Take it right.
that negative impact on children. We just have to really come up with what's what we can do to save our children, save our young men and boys that are out here being very wayward. That's what we have. I mean, you asked me, what can we do? I don't know. Our community has to come together and figure that out.
Well, this has been great. I so much I wish Kim would have been here. He could have weighed in from so many different factions.
yes.
But Tangela and Regina, we're going to get you all back, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you all are proactively doing. We didn't have a lot of time to do it in this 1 hour I'm on this show with one of the best commentators of all in all America, and that's my cousin Janis, and y'all got a taste of that tonight.
Well, we'll be going. I'll be going back and forth to Tallahassee every week the next few weeks because it's session, and maybe we can come and give you some updates.
We
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 have a
love that.
Curtis. Yeah, we
We
have a
love that.
Curtis Bill, a mother out of Jacksonville that created a Curtis Bill. The son was killed here, but it was actually passed in California. So now we're trying to get it passed here in Miami-Dade County.
Thanks.
Um, so that's just stand your ground. I'm working not to move it because you have to be strategic, and your cousin would know that you have to be very strategic when you want to do things, and change things and amend things. So I have a Republican that's over the Criminal Justice Committee, but he's a prosecutor, so he's willing to workshop this bill so that we can make some changes. I mean, I speak with the owner of the bill all the time, and it's a situation like the crime bill. All the blacks supported it because they did not know it would turn out to be used the way it's being used today.
Mm-hmm.
It dealt with a lot of women and domestic violence who was saying that this piece of paper just wasn't no good and they needed something to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when a lawyer get involved, they can take a sentence and make 50 different things out of that
Yes.
sentence. And so what's happening now in Miami-Dade is all the blacks that do get caught, they use stand your ground. I lost my case on stand your ground. We have a lot of cases lined up here and in Jacksonville that's being used under stand your ground. So just
So
trying to amend some words into that so that it can't be used where if me and you get in an argument and I could just shoot and kill you say
Yes.
I thought.
so
Yes.
that's why I really wanted to have Sabrina Fulton on with us tonight because I want to really delve into that. I know you're dealing with it, but I know she's a direct victim of it. So let's
No, Sabrina case was not a stand your ground case. It came up, and that's how the community learned about it. But it was
okay,
not used in her case. But now we're trying to educate the community. I don't think Sabrina has touched it in about probably about 8 years. Because the thing is, you can't go in fighting to get it done.
right.
Once the election over, I learned from Carrie Me, Kareem Brown, and them. They taught me when the election is over, you have to go in there.
Okay, so I just got a note from the producer. We got to get out of here. I want to do a segment. So Tangela, I'll see you in Tallahassee probably week after next. And if you'll come back on with us, Miss Regina, we'd love to have you back on. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I want to I want to close out with a segment that Kim started on here. It's called As I See It. And so, as I said, we're talking to two sisters who have been moved and motivated by personal tragedies to make life better for others so that other fathers or mothers don't have to suffer this loss. My brother is a victim. I was recently with a cousin whose husband, the two of them shared victim status to gun violence, black on black crime, likely. I heard what Tangela said about the Bible earlier about things are not going to get better, and certainly that's what Revelations teaches us. But dog it is children of the King, as Christians, as preachers, as anything to do with the gospel of Christ Jesus. We can't go with our hands up. We got to take an action like the two of them are. And the scripture says the weapon of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the pulling down of strongholds. What's happening on the east side in Jacksonville is a stronghold. What's happening down in Dade is a stronghold. That foolishness in Tallahassee is a stronghold. It's a stronghold. There's spirits over these communities. We're going to pray them down. We're going to believe. We're going to go on street corners and we're going to pray. We're going to go in prayer. We're going to go with oil. Point of contact. We're going to be prayed up. We're going to oil down poles in the community, uh, light poles, anything in those areas, and we're going to declare that those are non-violent areas in the name of Jesus. Okay, so I'm preaching tonight, but what I came by to say that as I see it, things can get better. We we can't talk about the village that was. We got to recreate the village and make it the village that is. Jan, I love you. I love our guests tonight. To my family at GoGigaCreation.com. We love you. Join us next Monday night, Dialogue with Dozell, part 3. Hey man, you see what it's like when these ladies jump all over your boy. If Kim not here to help me, I'm gonna have to bring me somebody in from football. They got all over me. We're gonna pick up and talk about the integration fake us out, that we regress or progress through integration. Next week's Dialogue with Dozell. See you there. God bless y'all. Love you.